circle, centers for Cousins, a shot, and he scores. Dylan Cousins makes it 3-0 Lethbridge.
Myram gonna take it coast to coast on a backhand, scores!
To the blue line, Vandalese, that effort, tip, scores! Carson Folk is Mr. Teddy Bear!
He scores! It's over! It's over! Game 7, overtime, hero!
Hi, hello, and welcome to the WHL Podcast. I'm Zach Hodder, your host and the manager of player development for the Western Hockey League. We have a jam-packed episode for you today featuring a Stanley Cup champion and the only person to give the crowd in Montreal the middle finger, and former Moose Jaw Warriors captain and WHL Humanitarian of the Year. But first, it's time for the news and notes. We start with the NHL Awards, where former Prince Albert Raider and Kelowna Rocket Leon Draisaitl, the Deutschland Dangler, has been named the Hart Trophy and Ted Lindsay Award winner. Draisaitl becomes the first Western Hockey League player to win the Hart and the Lindsay since Carey Price took home both awards in 2015. Draisaitl scored 43 goals, added 67 assists for a total of 110 points. Staying in the NHL, 3 of the 5 referees selected to work the Stanley Cup Finals are WHL alumni. Steve Kazari, Kelly Sutherland, and Dan O'Rourke are all staying in the bubble a little bit longer as the Tampa Bay Lightning and Dallas Stars battle it out in their quest for the Cup. Kazari is appearing in his 3rd Cup Finals after officiating the 2019 and 2014 Cup Finals. His son Jackson is a current Western Hockey League linesman and a referee in training. Sutherland is appearing in his 7th Cup Finals, including the 2019, 2018, 2016, 2015, 2011, and 2010 Cup Finals. He's a veteran of over 1,200 NHL games, and the Richmond, BC native got his start in the NHL on December 19th, 2000, when the Atlanta Thrashers took on the Los Angeles Kings. And lastly, O'Rourke, a former WHL player, is appearing in his 4th Cup Finals after officiating the 2016, 2012, and 2011 final. O'Rourke ranks 6th among all active referees with 128 career playoff games. Finally, the WHL Podcast would like to take a moment to remember Lethbridge Hurricanes prospect Dylan Ash, who tragically passed away. Ash signed with the Hurricanes as an undrafted free agent and spent last season with the Melfort Mustangs. We would like to extend our heartfelt condolences to his family, his friends, and his teammates.
Up the wing, it's Tyler Seguin with it. Drifts and shoots. It bounced around in front. Score! Ference! And it's 3-2 Bruins.
Eddie, this thing gets Holtby up high. You get people in the net, and then Ference with the live legs beats everybody up the ice.
I'm here with former Western Hockey League defenseman, NHL Stanley Cup winner, and the 1998 Memorial Cup champion with the Portland Winterhawks. Currently, he is employed with the NHL as the Director of Social Impact, Growth, and Legislative Affairs. Andrew Ference. Andrew, how's your summer been?
Well, unique, I guess, like most people, but we're making the most of it. Life goes on to a certain extent. Living in Edmonton, Alberta right now, and sent the oldest daughter off to prep school out in the island, and the other one's at home doing school right now. So yeah, it was a crazy summer, obviously, with lockdown and work being conducted like this, but same boat as everybody, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's unique in the fact that everybody has to adjust, but everybody's adjusting at the same time and together, and it's just unknown, and we don't know what next week could bring or even next month. So it's a really exciting time with a lot of opportunity. And how has it affected what you're trying to do, and are there any projects you're currently working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously affected us across the board. I mean, the disruption of the season was obviously has ripple effects across the whole business. It's amazing. It's not my department. It's more events that put on the bubble here in Edmonton and did such an amazing job of getting through playoffs here, going into the finals here right away. So that's been a tremendous success as far as pulling that off. On my side, our department, we're more focused on the youth level, some of the youth programming, and obviously some government affairs issues. So some projects have been able to go forth without much problem at all. We've been primarily working on our culture hotline, which is for all of our employees and players and coaches to make sure that we're, following appropriate culture throughout the NHL and business. And so I've been working hard on that, and also some street hockey initiatives, which have been a lot more effective because, obviously that's a programming thing at our youth level that, youth sports in general has been, put on pause in many parts of North America. So certain aspects we've been able to build up, but pretty tough to actually, implement the programming in times like these. So it's been a bit of both, some full steam ahead and some, really disrupted things at work.
You talked about culture there. You obviously were on a 98 Memorial Cup winning team, a 2011 Stanley Cup winning team. You've been around winning cultures and successful cultures. So what's the type of culture you're trying to develop with the NHL and the people that work with you?
Well, there's some, very, very straightforward things as far as, what's right and what's wrong in today's workplace. And that's no different from the NHL to most corporations throughout North America now. That there's obviously been a major focus on that over the past year. And the NHL is no different. We're a workplace that's not just hockey players and coaches. We have, a significant number of employees throughout North America in our New York offices and our Montreal and Toronto offices. So like most places, it's a normal workplace. A lot of people that, don't play hockey or don't know a lot about hockey, but they come to work every day, and we're trying to create an environment that is positive and fair for everybody. So yes, it's a culture when we think of a locker room and about youth hockey and what's acceptable and what's, creating an environment where everybody feels welcome and has a good time and has an enjoyable time and a positive experience with hockey. But there's also the stuff that's completely outside of the arena and just the workplace environment for people at the NHL level, but also at our club level. Whether you're selling tickets or corporate sponsorship or you're on the legal department, it's a pretty wide scope when you're thinking of stuff like that. But culture in general, I think it, whether it is in the locker room or in the middle of some corporation, I think it is pretty simple, right? It is about, being a good person and treating other people, the way you want to be treated. And it's a lot of it falls back to, the stuff that, most of us, I think, probably learned as kids. And I think the most successful teams I had been on, and whether that's the Memorial Cup teams or the Stanley Cup teams, we had really strong leadership, from coaches and from general managers and from the older players in the room, the veterans, that really drove down that really positive environment, So when you did show up to work, you felt good about yourself, you felt good about the environment that you were part of, and you felt like you're part of something, much, much bigger than yourself. And so that was, like I said, there's a lot of things that do transfer from a positive, team atmosphere into the workplace.
Just talking about that transition a little bit more, what has it been like for you transitioning from the dressing room, transitioning from the locker room to a business setting, especially one with the NHL, which is such a high-profile league in North America? Were you able to make that transition pretty easily, or was there, some aspects of the job that you didn't really realize were going to be as difficult as they've become?
Well, it's unique for sure. I think it's, spending so long in a locker room and in a team environment, there's always an awareness that it's not normal. It's obviously a fairly unique position to be in, and things just are done differently, and things are very immediate. When you're in sports, it's all about the here and now today. What are you doing in the gym? What are you doing in practice? What skill are you working on? Did you win? Did you lose? What are you fixing that can be implemented in tomorrow's game? So it's a very, very here and now business where, the corporate side, it's long-term stuff, right? And I think even the department that I work on, even within the NHL is more of a longer term department. We're looking at 5, 10, 15, 20 year, projects and nudges, in our sport that, take a lot of patience. So probably one of the bigger adjustments has been that is just the patience to, not expect immediate results and not expect, things to just happen at the drop of a dime. It's really, those small nudges to get to where you're trying to get to. That was something that I think I've come to really appreciate about, being a hockey player and being in sports is the fact that you can, so tactically go after a specific area of weakness or a specific thing you want to work on. And over the course of a very short amount of time, get better at it or change it, So I think, it was a big wake up call.
We're talking about culture and being the good person and patience, and you've certainly demonstrated that your entire career. I mean, we go back to your days in Portland. In 1998, you guys won the Memorial Cup, and then in 1999, you won the WHL Humanitarian of the Year. Do you remember any of the projects that you were involved in that year in Portland that led you to winning the award?
Well, in preparation for this call, I was watching the previous episode that you guys put out, and it's been a while. Honestly, I was thinking back. I'm like, geez, like what did we do back then? And to be honest, I've not just my career, but even the things that I did, off the ice, I give, almost, I mean, a lot of credit to my parents. My parents brought me up well, but to my coach, Brent Peterson, who coached us in Portland and obviously went on and coached many years in Nashville as well, and was still involved with the Predators. But Brent was a very, just really good human being. And I know when I was making the decision whether or not to go to the WHL or go college route, in talking to Portland, I know my parents took really good comfort in talking to Brent and talking to Ken Hodge, who was there at the time, that their priority was to develop good men. It wasn't all hockey, right? They talked a lot about school. They talked about the importance of, getting the good education, about, being good people. And I think that was who they were really in their hearts too. That's what, it wasn't just a sales pitch. That's actually how they delivered their messages to us as players too, in the locker room, and what they demanded of us as people. And so specific initiatives, I mean, we went out, we're in the community, and I think that the teams now and the players now do way more than we did. It's a lot more of a common practice for junior teams to get out and do things much like, I think at an NHL level, they've done for a long time. When I was playing junior, there's a few things that I went out and did on my own with kids in hockey in Portland, some different youth services that were organized through churches around Portland. I was quite involved with those. But, there wasn't a ton, to be honest. I think the guys now have a lot more of a built-up system within the teams that help them, and guide them in the community to do more community service. But I think at the core of it, like I said, going back to Brent, is he constantly stressed that, he wanted to build good men and good human beings. And in turn, that will create a good hockey team. If you have good people, and if you have people that are striving to be good, good human beings, in turn, that will develop, a good hockey team. I'm a big fan of rugby as well. So I'm a huge rugby fan, and I've read a lot, and actually gotten to know a couple New Zealand All Blacks. And it's somewhat their philosophy as well. It's one of the most successful sports franchises, or, sports teams in the world. And really that's their core values as well too, right? Like, they go after good human beings, and they stress the importance of developing good people, and they'll pick good people over good talent because they know the importance of that, right? And so I think Brent could have been on the staff of the All Blacks, because a lot of the things that he was teaching us as young junior players really falls in line with their belief system as well. And I give him full credit for opening my eyes as a 16-year-old, because I was pretty clueless to most things in life at that age, and he really taught me a lot.
You talked about choosing good people over good players. And I think one of the most famous stories about you is in 1997, you were unranked before the NHL draft, and you sent a letter to every single NHL GM, pretty much detailing in what, if you went to school, would be an academic paper about why you should be an NHL player. I mean, when I reread that today, researching you before this, it's unbelievable that you had the foresight to do that. And not only did you get drafted in the 8th round by the Pittsburgh Penguins, but you ended up playing 30 games with Pittsburgh 2 years later. So what went into that decision to write that letter? And then the second thing is, what did you do once you got to Pittsburgh to show them that you were a guy that at a very young age could come in and play important games and important minutes for them?
Yeah, it's funny to look back. I mean, that's what went into it. I mean, a recipe of really good self-confidence, a chip on my shoulder, probably from not being ranked, and a dose of desperation, I think. I mean, it's a little bit of all of it, I guess. I mean, we had a lot of success in Portland. I had, a great junior career, and but I knew, at the time it was an era of very big defensemen, right? So, I definitely had a disadvantage being 5'10", trying to get drafted in the NHL at that time. So, so at the time, I wasn't ranked at all, and it wasn't the combine wasn't held in the fashion that it is today, you know, where it's a huge event, but there was an element of testing that was being done, by teams, for the, higher prospects. And I always knew that, I would do really well in that kind of testing. Fitness was always a big part of what I took pride in, as being a fit player. And I knew that if I took those tests, I could, really do well especially against some other players. And so included with that letter of just, explaining like, hey, look, I'm not ranked. I think I should be. I think you should take a chance on me, kind of thing. I also included testing scores, because I went and did my own testing at the University of Alberta, who basically had, the same protocols for the testing that they're doing at the NHL level, and gave my numbers. I said, obviously not being ranked, I don't have the opportunity to do this, but, here's my numbers anyways, kind of thing. and I think it, like I said, the desperation side of it was knowing that, I sacrificed a lot, to take one chance at making the NHL and making hockey a thing. If you don't really go after it with everything you got, like, what's the point, right? And so at that point, if I wasn't going to get drafted, I knew the road would be much, much tougher. It's harder to get your foot in the door if you don't get drafted. Can it happen? 100%, of course. Like, being drafted is not the end all and be all, but without a doubt, getting your foot in the door, getting a chance to go to a training camp is a huge step for any player. And so, yeah, credit, to the Penguins that took me. I think actually Brent, back to the coach, I think he put in a good solid word for me when a couple teams did call back after I had sent that out. And he said, no, like, take a chance, like, it's an 8th round pick, who else are you going to pick at that point? So, they did take a chance, and I, made it a mission. As a late round pick, you get one opportunity to make yourself stand out from others. And so I took full advantage of that. Went to Pittsburgh. They did have physical testing at a training camp. I've always been a big cyclist and pay a lot of attention to my fitness. So I did really well in my fitness testing, which allowed me to stand out from the crowd immediately. And then in our first kind of inter squad game, where Team White versus Team Yellow or whatever it was, I ended up getting in a fight with the guy that was drafted in the first round before, a big defenseman, and I did all right. And so, just played my heart out, right? I had a few days to make a name for myself and played my heart out and just did everything I could to just try to stand apart from the crowd. And there's certain things in hockey and in your career that you can control. And then there's a lot that's completely out of your control, right? So I was just concentrated on, like, here's the 5 things that I have direct control over, how I play, how I work out, how I'm preparing myself. And then I just had, the resignation that, some of it's just going to be out of my control. And there's only so much you can do, right? So, yeah, it was good hard work and good fortunate timing and luck as well to go in a situation like Pittsburgh, where, a defenseman got hurt and, there's the right type of coach, for my style of play, and I got a chance. So sometimes it just has to work out too.
Hey, and you made the most of that chance. 4 seasons in Pittsburgh, 4 seasons in Calgary, 7 in Boston, and then you finished your career with the Edmonton Oilers. And you were involved in causes all the way throughout your career. In 2006, you reached out to Right to Play. And then the one project I'd like to ask you about is the November Project, which you were a part of in Boston, is where it started, I believe. And it's continued all the way on from, I think, 2011 or 13, one of those two.
Yeah.
And
so it's been a while.
Yeah. Can you just explain kind of what the idea behind the November Project was and why it's exploded kind of the way it did?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I mean, I think just get my dates straight too. I think 2011 was the NHL lockout. It was the second one that I went through. So I was in Boston training, getting ready for the season, and then obviously going into a lockout. It extended, our preparation time. So I was doing a lot of workouts at Harvard Stadium. It was open access stadium, and running stairs was always a thing that really helped me. So I'd run the stairs there, and I had a mutual friend that told me to hook up with this other crew that was running stairs, and had some super fit people out there. So I went and joined them one day, And it was a really super strong group that was really welcoming and nice. And it was these guys that started this thing called the November Project because frankly they didn't have a lot of money to go to gyms and stuff, and they hated working out alone, and they wanted to keep each other accountable. So they created this group where they kind of committed to each other to show up and run these stairs every Wednesday. And then that turned into like, okay, let's do this every Monday as well. And it just kind of built up to this group that was highly accountable to each other, super positive and free, right? Like anybody can come, super inclusive, very welcoming to, whoever wanted to come, be a positive member of that kind of community. And so I did that in Boston, worked out with them, ran stairs, had these, great moments with this great group of people. And then when I, signed in Edmonton, as a free agent, that was a lot of fun, right? I met new friends and had this kind of group outside of hockey that I really enjoyed being around. And I assumed that the same kind of a group could work in Edmonton. So I kind of put the word out and I enlisted the help of my sister to help kind of lead it because, I was still playing hockey. And then, one of the guys that showed up to the very first workout here in Edmonton, when I put it out, he ended up being a very close friend as well. So I asked him to help lead, when I had to go back to the season of playing and I wouldn't be able to show up every morning. And so between him, his name is Nadeem Shin, and my sister Jen, they took over leadership, and then I would pop in as kind of like a assistant leader, when I could, when I was home. And we created this community in Edmonton as well, much like the Boston one that met, 3 days a week in the mornings and ended up being all year round, even in the middle of the winter. And it's been going for many, many years. I've stepped away from leadership, in the last year and a bit, but it still goes on. And we built this great community of hundreds of people that, it gets together. It has made incredible friendships, different bonds with the city and has, been fit, just, change lives through kind of this real simple, simple idea of just free fitness and good, positive community.
Yeah, it's a grassroots community initiative, which is, something you've been famous for your whole career. It's a big part of why you won the King Clancy Award in 2014. And I'm sure it's a big reason why you got hired by the NHL after you retired. And what was that like when you retired? Did you know that there was a position at the NHL for you, or was it something that you reached out to them and had some ideas and some conversations just went from there?
Yeah, I had some pre-existing relationships with the NHL just because while I was playing, with the union, I started a carbon neutral challenge. So an environmental initiative within our union where I challenged guys to carbon offset their entire year of travel as individual players. And so that ended up being a pretty cool initiative that started in Calgary and kind of spread out to other teams, while I was playing for the Flames. And through that, I met people that worked at the NHL who eventually started at NHL Green, which is the environmental platform at the NHL where they're doing all the initiatives as well. And so I had those relationships and worked a bit with them as a player, got to know the commissioner a little bit through that, but also through collective bargaining, through the lockouts I went through. And then the last couple of years that I was in the NHL, I wanted to finish up some of my schooling and kind of further educate myself on some of the environmental issues that I was very interested in. So I took schooling through Harvard Extension School and went into corporate sustainability and innovation for the last couple of years that I was playing for the Oilers. And so I finished up that program and put some meat, educational meat on my passion around the environment and sustainability. And that really just kind of fit well with some of the work that my department's, my current department at the NHL was doing on sustainability. Obviously, working for a big corporation, it's not just about being green, but like, how does that affect business, and so that really lined up with what I was learning at school. And so really, there's a bit of both things. I was getting older and knew that my career was obviously winding down. The writing was on the wall there. So like all hockey players, there's a long life after hockey. And I knew that I didn't want to just sit around. I'm not a big golf fan. So it's just, I wanted to, have something to wake up in the morning and work towards and have projects. And this is something that, I obviously care deeply about. And fortunate enough that, I can stay in hockey, but it's also another part of my life that, means a lot to me.
The more you talk, the more I think what makes you such an interesting person is how, there's this caricature of an NHL hockey player who's just one-dimensional. And I mean, you have so many different avenues in your life of the projects that you're interested in, the causes that you want to be involved in. It's just, it's inspiring to hear, even for me, just to hear about your life and everything that you're continuing to do. But with that being said, outside of winning the Stanley Cup, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment, or the thing that you look back on throughout your career that you said that you believe affected the most people?
Oh man, I think like to the original point, I think I take a lot of pride, and I did learn from other players that I played with. I think probably one of the things I strived to be was, complex, right? Like to have different things going on, and to make sure that I was investing my time and energy into to many things. And I think that's probably, that is almost what I lead with when I give advice to younger players, guys that are trying to make the NHL or WHL or different levels of hockey is the advice I give is don't lose, your interests and your curiosity and your passion for things other than hockey. Make sure that you're investing in those other parts of your life and those other parts of your brain that aren't about hockey. Make sure that you're creating friends outside of hockey, because it is very, very important, not only while you're playing, to have an escape from the game, and to make sure that you have, other things in your life that you can balance out, the pressures of playing and the stress that comes with trying to make it in hockey. But for sure, of course, after hockey, it helps you out by making sure that you have other interests and you have other things that you're capable of doing and things that you're interested in, and friends that are interested in other things that aren't just about the game, right? So that is probably the top advice that I give to other people, because it actually, I think, helps your performance as well. It gives you a level of confidence that, should I blow my knee out next game, it's all right. It's not the end of the world. I have other things that I care about, right? So I think that, as far as impact, I mean, the Stanley Cup, it's pretty tough to beat. It's a great moment personally, but also, it's a huge kind of payoff for all those people that help support me in chasing this dream, right? But I think, as far as impact goes, I think, setting an example for younger teammates, showing younger teammates or other people, that may be coming through hockey, that you can have, a lot of things going on in your life, and it doesn't detract from you as a hockey player. It doesn't make you a worse player to have other interests outside of the game, to show younger teammates that, you don't have to fit this mold of what you think a hockey player is. You don't have to love golf. It doesn't matter, if you don't. You don't have to love country music. If you're from Alberta and play hockey, it's fine if you do, but you don't have to. And I think building those cultures, like we did in Boston, like we had in Calgary, like we started in Edmonton, where, to make sure that it was inclusive of whoever you are. You don't have to fit this mold of what you think of Boston Bruin is. We want you to show up to the rink and be you. And we think that, we had really good leadership on those teams where that was really important to our success as a team, is that, people showed up as hockey players to play the game, but they also showed up as who they were as people, right? And we're not all the same. We all have our things, and we all have our differences, and we all have, things that make us unique. And, when you show up to work, and we show up to a work, like the type of work that we did, where it's very high performance, you don't want anything holding you back, right? And I think that, by showing up as who you are as a person, and comfortable in your own skin and what you're all about, we're going to get the best performance out of you. And so I think that's the legacy of some of those, things is hopefully those guys that I played with that were younger than me, guys that, saw the type of atmosphere that we were trying to build. Hopefully they, saw the success of that and helped build that on the teams that they're involved with, whether they're as players, and many of them will go on to be coaches or general managers. And it's that generational shift of making that, kind of culture kind of pervasive through hockey.
pervasive through all of hockey. Currently with your new role with the NHL, you've been in a couple of years. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. I really appreciate it, and best of luck to you with the NHL.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's great that you guys are doing these conversations.
Second period, and Alexander's stick broke, so David Krejci comes right at him and shot the puck just wide of the net. There's a shot by Ference, scores! Deflected in front. Andrew Ference, 1-0 Boston.
Our next guest went from undrafted to the captain of the Moose Jaw Warriors. In 269 WHL games, he found the back of the net 81 times and added 119 assists for an even 200 career points.
Shemitz, and Shemitz now skates up the left side into the Moncton zone. Centers in front, scores! Fioretti just skated straight down the ice. Off the boards, Fioretti shoots, scores! What a goal by Fioretti! To Pufol, cross ice, Fioretti left circle. Fioretti shoots, scores! I think.
Hi, today I'm here with former Moose Jaw Warriors captain Sam Fioretti. Sam, you're currently waiting on Hurricane Teddy to make landfall in Halifax, where you are. How you doing, and what have you done to prepare for the hurricane that's coming through?
I've prepared a little bit differently than I did for the storms in Moose Jaw, to say the least. It's my first hurricane, so stocked up on some canned tuna and non-perishables.
So you're back in the Maritimes. You went to Acadia for 4 years. You got your biology degree. Tell us about what you're studying right now and where you're studying.
Yeah, so now I'm at Dalhousie University doing my MBA. Like you've mentioned, I did a biology undergraduate there at Acadia, and then kind of transitioned more towards the business world here at Dalhousie.
What made you want to take your MBA and not continue with the biology route? I mean, I was in researching you. I read a very long document, your thesis that you wrote at Acadia. It was very detailed on the biology of 2-foot landing on jumps, but now you've moved to the business world. So has your experience led you to this, or is this something you've always wanted to do?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for being the third person to read that besides me and my mother. So that's awesome. But I did my biology undergraduate degree, always focused on going into healthcare. I was trying to do medicine. Ultimately didn't get into medicine after a couple tries. So I wanted to go back to school, as my biology undergraduate degree just didn't open up enough doors for me. So I looked at doing my MBA as a way to kind of leverage my science background and a business background towards a future in business or a career in business down the road, with things like environmental energy, biotech, things like that. In today's world, leveraging those 2 degrees, I thought was a good step for me to take.
I mean, it sounds like you've already got it figured out. And again, there's a reason that in 2014, you were the CHL and WHL Humanitarian of the Year. If you can remember back to then, do you remember any of the projects or any of the initiatives that you took part in that led you to winning that award?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when people ask me about the Humanitarian of the Year award, for me, it always comes back, and it's with a lot of community initiatives with a lot of people you see. It's about finding something that you're passionate about. So with myself, I started I can't say myself personally, James Gallo, long list of people through Moose Jaw that helped with the programs, but an anti-bullying campaign, because somebody in my life was adversely affected by bullying to an extreme degree, and I wanted to give back in any way that I could. And then the other one was a youth fitness program, which obviously is athletes and role models in the community. It was a good way to leverage my athletic ability and recognition I had in the community towards that initiative.
Well, you spent 4 years in Moose Jaw with the Warriors. You, at the start of your career, were on some teams that it definitely looked like at the time had every possibility to compete for a WHL championship. And as you progressed through and became the leader and ultimately the captain your last season there, you had some very, very talented young players coming up, including Braden Point. What can you remember about Braden from the time he was 15 when he joined you guys for that playoff run up until your last year in the Western Hockey League?
Pointer, I don't know I don't know what to say about Pointer that hasn't already been said. I mean, what he's doing now, I'd like to say that I'm surprised, but I mean this with the utmost respect to him, but I think he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, because he was an unbelievable player. I remember him coming in at 15 years old. I'm 18. I had established myself, and all of a sudden this 15-year-old comes in and he's scoring overtime winners and things like that. I just remember that Pointer was always the best player on the ice, no matter what ice surface we were on. He loved the game. He was the first person on the ice, the last person off. And I mean, what he's accomplishing now, I'd like to say that I'm surprised or anything like that, but I honestly just believe he's accomplishing what he was supposed to.
Tremendous player, in incredible shape. And I mean, if you saw him off the ice when you're playing junior hockey, he could have been blown over by a sturdy wind. So what he was able to do and what he's continued to do is just beyond impressive. But you talked about establishing yourself there in the Western Hockey League. You were an undrafted player that came into Moose Jaw. What was that experience like for you? And what do you think you did to earn your spot and then ultimately become a very important person for the Moose Jaw Warriors for 4 seasons?
I think that to answer that question, I think just to say what I did would be a little bit naive. I think that with hockey, especially today, all the skills coaches, the off-ice training, I went to crash conditioning for years, things like that helped me learn how to become a major junior hockey player, as well as the fact that I was always motivated to make the WHL, even going undrafted. I think that the draft is so early that it's hard to determine whether or not players are going to make it and things like that. And I think that it's kind of a learning process. I mean, I'm obviously doing academia now, but there's so many players that go undrafted, go on to the NHL. It's ultimately, I think it was just a work ethic along with the people I had kind of leading me in the right direction.
As you said, you're currently in the world of academics, but when you came to the end of your Western League career, you realistically, you have a couple options. I mean, number one, you can just go be a degenerate and do nothing, or you can take advantage of your WHL scholarship, go to school like you did, or you can go try to play pro. I mean, for yourself, you chose to go to Acadia University, which is in Wolfsville, Nova Scotia, I believe, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When you had the opportunity to go to Acadia, what factored into that choice over, the U of A or the U of C where you're from that led you ultimately to hop on a plane to the East Coast?
I think that first off, the decision to go to school, I think it's different for everybody. My parents always instilled in me academics was extremely important. Coming out of the WHL, I didn't have the NHL offers or anything like that. So obviously that would have transitioned it towards me going to pro. The scholarship package that the WHL offers, I remember sitting in undergraduate classes talking about the scholarship package that's put forward. And there's these students that are going into taking out student loans, going into debt, and just the scholarship package that offered, I felt like I had to take advantage of that. So at the end of my 19-year-old season, actually, my sister was graduating from Acadia, and I came out for the graduation weekend, and I'll just say that I had a little bit of fun on the weekend and really enjoyed it. And then when I was going through the recruiting process, as not making the playoffs my 20-year-old year, I may have gone on about as many recruiting trips as I could possible, travel across Canada. And I kind of learned through that experience, I wanted a smaller school. So it ended up coming down for me between St. FX and Acadia, and just having the connection to Acadia with my sister, as well as offering the biology program that I was looking for, ended up leading me towards Acadia University.
Well, you graduated from Acadia with a degree, as we've already mentioned, in biology, and then you went to play 1 year in the ECHL. What was that season like? Was professional hockey at the ECHL level what you expected it to be? And then why did you ultimately decide to only play 1 season of pro?
Yeah, so it was, first off, I really enjoyed it. It was, you know what, I have to say that it was better hockey than what I was expecting. I didn't have like horrible expectations or anything like that, but there's truly are some really good players in there in that league that you look at them, and the reason they're not in the American League is just because the American League has already has so many good players, right? There's people that can play there, but they just get sent down due to numbers. And then, yeah, so I decided to only play 1 season because I was actually applying to medical school during the season, and I always wanted to just kind of check that off the list of playing 1 year of professional hockey, and then transition back towards academics. Didn't end up getting into med school at that point, so I just transitioned towards the working world. But for me, it was always just a 1 year type of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. And you gave yourself the opportunity to do that by, working hard when you're in the Western Hockey League, but also working hard when you were at Acadia as well, to make sure that once you graduated, you knew that opportunity was still going to be there for you. I guess my last question for you here is you've had an extensive hockey life. You've now transitioned into the academic side and your business career as it's going to start taking off here. But when you look back on your hockey career, is there a moment or a game that you look back on as that's my favorite hockey moment?
I can't say that there's a singular moment or a singular game. I think that as a broad scope, it's being around teammates, it's times in the dressing room, it's the memories you have in that capacity. I mean, being, I guess, 2 years out of hockey now, that's the thing that I miss the most. But if you were to pressure me on one hockey moment, it would definitely be during my 18-year-old year on our run to the Eastern Conference Final. Just the group of guys that we had, winning those series, that was definitely, I guess, the pinnacle of my WHL career, and I guess most fun I had in my sports career.
Sam, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. Hunker down, eat those non-perishable food items, maybe space it out. You never know. But best of luck as you get going on your MBA out there at Dalhousie.
Thank you very much.
That's it for this week's edition of the WHL Podcast. Thank you to Andrew Ference and Sam Fioretti, as well as yourself, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at Zach Hodder. You can follow the Western Hockey League at the WHL. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you again next Wednesday.